A popular Arizona radio host stops by the DPS 7 Points podcast. I'm your co-host, Warren Trent.
And I'm Sergeant Kameron Lee, and we welcome the infamous
right,
Mike Broomhead.
It's funny to call you Sergeant Kameron Lee.
Is it?
It is.
Yeah. I still have to check and make sure that they're not on by Velcro. You know,
Just rip them off.
Can't be ripped off. But yeah.
Man.
Mike, thank you for being here.
It's fun. I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Yeah, we've known each other for quite a while.
We
now,
have.
So I can't remember the date. It was probably around 2016, maybe.
Something like
2017
that.
is when we first met.
Yeah.
And ever since then, you've just been a big proponent of the agency, and I know you're a law enforcement supporter in general. And
Yeah, I got a brother that's a cop.
yeah,
So not here, but in Florida. So I have a brother that's a captain with the sheriff's office. So he's a deputy.
Okay.
So
that's awesome.
Wow.
We want people to get to know you,
okay.
maybe the way that I know you,
Oh,
because
that's a little scary, but all right, let's
Watch
do
out.
it. Let's
Yeah,
do
right?
it.
Hey, I want to hear this too.
yeah, because your story is so unique, especially in the broadcasting
Yeah.
industry and how you got to where you are.
Yeah, and I didn't realize it was as unique until I was in the business a while.
Okay.
Mhm.
You know?
Yeah.
So I was, when I hear people that are in radio or television or in the broadcasting business,
Right.
the hard work they've done, I'm sure you did it as well.
Sure.
People that work so hard to get a break.
Yep. Yep.
And I literally was handed a radio show. So there's a guy here in town. He owns a country station out in Wickenburg now, but his name is Mike Barna, and he was in talk radio for a long time. And I did a fill-in with somebody and walked out of the studio, and he said, "Hey, you're pretty good at this. Do you want to try doing it?" And I said, "I'll do it on the weekends." And he gave me a weekend radio show. That's literally how I started.
Wow.
And when I tell that to anybody that's gone to broadcasting school and worked overnights and
They're like,
I feel
"Dang
bad.
you."
I feel bad telling the story, but that's literally how it happened.
Yeah.
Wow.
And sometimes that's the way things work. But
Absolutely. Yeah, I was going to say, so you interview people for a living.
Yeah.
And now here we are interviewing you.
Yeah,
so
it's kind of
what
fun.
It's kind of different, right?
I kind of like it.
Yeah,
I'm interested to hear what you're going to ask me. I'm already trying to think ahead of what you might ask me, but no, I like it. It'll be a nice switch.
yeah. What we do with most of our guests, Mike, is we want to get to know you a little bit better.
Okay.
We want the audience, the viewers, the listeners to get to know you a little bit better. So if we could just kind of start from the beginning and just let you go, and then when we get
What
to
do you
where
want about my career? About
let's
that
start
part
with your
of
childhood.
I was born in Northeast Ohio. I was born in the city of Cleveland, and I lived in farm country way up in Northeast Ohio in Geauga County. So that was kind of that rural life is what I lived when I was little. My parents decided to move to Southwest Florida when I was 9 or 10 years old. So when I talk about my hometown and where I grew up, I talk about Southwest Florida, a town called Fort Myers on the Gulf side. My brother's still there where he's a deputy, and my mom is still alive and lives there. So I grew up there. I came to Arizona I started as an electrician at 18 in 1985. I came to Arizona in 1992 on vacation and fell in love with it. I just loved the Western lifestyle. I always wanted to be a rodeo cowboy. I love the rodeo world. And in 1995, I packed up everything I owned and came to Arizona and decided I was going to be a bull rider, which was the dumbest but the most fun decision I ever made in my life because I was terrible at it, but I loved it.
Yeah.
How long did you do that, bull riding? Huh?
Well, I was around the sport of rodeo from about 1995 until about 2003.
Okay.
But I loved it so much. I just was no good at it. I was a terrible bull rider, but I learned the rodeo business from a world champion and his brother from Wickenburg. His name is Cody Custer, and his brother Jim Bob Custer. And they taught me the business. So I took care of a pen of bulls at the Cave Creek Arena for years, fed them every night, watered them every night, doctored them when they needed to, dewormed them, did all that stuff, bucked them on the weekends. I learned I earned the cowboy hat. You know what I mean? I loved it. I love the sport to this day. I just was never good at the sport.
Here's what I love telling people about rodeo bulls. And I'm kind of around the rodeo scene myself, is people don't realize they are putting on a show.
Yeah.
They know exactly what they're doing.
Yeah.
And once they leave that arena, you can walk up to most of them and just pet them.
Yeah.
Right? So they're there for the show. They know what they're doing. They're well taken care of. They're well treated.
They eat well, man.
Yeah. They're
I can
living the high
attest to
life.
that.
Right.
They're living the high life.
Yeah, we had a bull we called the Rock, and he would stand in the chutes as gentle as a puppy. and you'd open the gate and he'd turn back and kick over his head and buck you off. And then he would stop and walk around you so he didn't step on you. And that was how gentle his personality was. But he was an athlete, and it was the competition, and that was the fun part of that. They all had personalities. I loved it.
And step and walk around you?
Walk around him. And there are others that are
Wow.
pretty hooky. You know, there are some that'll jerk you down. But for this bull was so gentle, he'd throw you off and walk around you so he didn't step on you.
Yeah, there's a whole business of just raising bucking bulls.
Yeah, now
right?
it's breeding them like they do racehorses.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. So you've also written a book that I've read. What? Tell us the title of your book.
Okay, the book is called "If You're Going to Be Dumb, You Better Be Tough." And originally, it was going to be kind of life lessons for my grandkids someday. You know, and it's just about my life. Just some of my mom used to say. My mom still says it to me, but that's what my mom would say growing up. If you're going to be dumb, you better be tough. So I figured that would needed to be the title of a book that I would write.
Yeah.
So
I mean, if you're going to ride bucking bulls, you've got to be pretty tough.
And you know what's funny?
Yeah.
It's a cathartic experience because I wrote it. A girl named Lisa DiPasquale. It was actually was the writer. So we would talk on the phone, and she would record our conversations, and then it would have it transcribed, and then put it in book form. And telling those stories about growing up, my grandfather and family members, it was pretty emotional. It was like therapy. So it was fun for me. I don't know how entertaining it is for anybody else, but for me, it was fun because it was reliving some stories that were very meaningful to me. And I thought that was fun.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of stories, I have to ask you. So you've been full-time since 2009, if I'm not mistaken.
Right.
Yeah. So there must have been, and probably are, any number of memorable interviews you've done.
Yeah.
So can you just
I would
some?
say the most memorable person that I ever had a chance to get to know and interview was the late Senator John McCain. For whatever reason, he really took a liking to me personally. Before I was even full-time in radio, when he ran for president the year, and when he lost to Barack Obama that year, I was asked to be the master of ceremonies at his final rally the night before the election. So the Monday night before the election, he did what Barry Goldwater did and had a huge rally in Prescott at the courthouse. And I was asked to be the master of ceremonies. And this was before, that was, obviously 2004. It was before or 2008, I'm sorry, before I was full-time in radio. And what a great experience. And then over the years, he would come in the studio and he would just tell the most interesting stories. And we would argue. He would argue with me like he would argue with a Senate colleague. And when I disagreed with him about something. And it was just, I was always honored because here was a guy that knew more about foreign policy, I think, than anybody alive. And he talked to me like I was a colleague. He was never condescending, and he was funny and sarcastic and had great stories. So he was a memorable interview. When he got sick and he came home for treatment, his first interview in the country after getting treatment was in my studio and said, I wanted to start here. And I just thought that was I was very flattered by that.
That's an honor for sure.
I interviewed Trump when he was a candidate on the phone. I've had Mike Pence when he was vice president on a couple of times, the Speaker of the House. So political figures. But I've gotten to interview and meet on my I have a podcast, and on our podcast, I've had Randy Johnson. I've had Gonzo.
That's awesome.
Derek Hall, the president of the D-backs, Michael Bidwill, the owner of the Cardinals.
Yeah.
And so when you get to talk in that, in that stratosphere of people, it's pretty amazing.
And when you get to know people on that level, you see them for who they are. And so many of them are just so genuine. Obviously, we see those figureheads on TV, but they're so genuine when you get to know them a little bit more.
Yeah, when they're willing to kind of drop their guard a little bit, because I realize on media when I did a ride along with you guys, or when I ride along with law enforcement, I don't blame them for having a little bit of a guard up with media. And the same with when you get an owner like Michael Bidwill, they have to worry a little bit of what's going to be said on Monday on the show or whatever. But when they let you inside a little bit, it's fun.
Yeah.
Governor Ducey was a frequent guest. I'd known the governor for a while. I was at an event last weekend, and he was there, and we were talking, and I said, "Hey, Gov, how you doing?" And somebody said, "Did you just call him Gov?" And I said, "Well, he calls me Broomy, so I hate that nickname." So so you're right. When you get to know them a little bit.
And you've had our current governor, Katie Hobbs, on.
I interviewed her for television, not on the radio. She's not been on the radio show. She's been on the television show.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. So I want to backtrack a little bit, Mike, because you mentioned you were you became an electrician.
Yeah.
You moved out here. You actually started your own company.
I did.
And so let's go from like right there
Yeah.
to slowly your progression into radio.
So the short story of it is I bought in with a partner in 2001 as a contractor, and then we went our separate ways in 2003. About 2003. But on Memorial Day of 2003, I'm the oldest of three brothers. My middle brother, Tom, was killed in Iraq. So it was the very beginning of the Iraq War. The invasion happened in March of 2003. My brother was killed in May on Memorial Day of 2003. So I was, being the oldest brother, the family spokesman. Well, it happened on Memorial Day. It was really early in the war. When I flew to Florida to talk to the media, I think it's a funny story. You guys might not, but we're gross in our family. So my youngest brother, the cop, big tough cop, all he could do was cry and throw up. Yeah. That was all he could do. He was the baby of the family. And so I was the family spokesman. And we did a press conference, and I really thought it was going to be one camera, a couple of reporters, and some people taking our picture.
Right.
There were about 300 people there. Wow. Satellite trucks. MSNBC broke into live coverage, and it became a big deal. And then I got asked to speak at events. From that, I was asked to come and speak. I got asked to be a volunteer on the Bush campaign in 2004. Traveled the country at big events. I was at the President's Ranch in Texas and a speech on the National Mall. And it turned into this kind of a weird media career, which I wasn't looking for, and I wasn't getting paid at the time. And then the radio thing happened, and in 2004, 2005, part-time, 2009, full-time, and the economy closed my business in 2010. Right. But I had another career to go to, and I've been in radio and television ever since.
That's awesome.
Isn't that crazy?
Radio found you as opposed to you finding it. Huh?
Yeah, and I never knew how much I was going to love it. You know, and you coming from the business, you know, it's addicting. It is I can't explain it. I went through a divorce, and you know, that's such a horrible time in your life when you're going through something like that. But for me, the one place I found peace when that studio door closed, no matter what we were talking about, that I felt like that's where I belonged. It was the first time I really felt like I was where God wanted me to be. I loved it, and I still do. I still love it.
Like your sanctuary.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And is that because of people? Is that because you just get to talk to people and get to know their story?
Yeah.
And you become even more and more educated in all different kinds of things as well.
Having conversations with people I would never otherwise have a conversation with is what I love. I'm always been an outgoing person anyway, but one of the things I love about social media, and there's always good and bad and everything, but social media allows me to connect with people. I have people reach out and tell me how much they hate me, and I'll respond, and before it's all done, we're friends.
Yeah.
And I like that ability to have contact with people. And this job affords me the ability to meet very famous people I would never imagine, but just connect with listeners that people get it or they don't. And I like that. I love that.
I love that about the job that I do too, is even though most of the time when we encounter people, it's on a bad day,
right?
Their bad day, right? They're getting pulled over, or they just had a wreck, or whatever.
Something, right.
But there's been so many times where we've had a chance to just have a conversation, and I've ended a traffic stop, and then we just sat there and visited.
Yeah.
And we got to know each other and talk about things. And, you know, you find that most people they just want to do good. And
yeah,
I love getting to know people's stories because they're all so unique.
Remarkable. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And
Yep.
some of them are super remarkable.
Yep.
I mean, I've met people that are retired from all these amazing careers that they had, and you'd never know unless
Never know.
you never know unless you sat there and talked to them like that. So
this format of a podcast, I love so much because I'm always worried about the clock. You know what that's like.
Yeah,
You know, you're worried about the clock, and you got a segment, you got to be done. And but this format allows you to be a lot more free form and go deeper with people. And I've had people in my studio and the podcast telling me stories. Jerry Colangelo, sitting in my podcast studio, and he said, let me tell you the story of how we named the Chicago Bulls. I'm like, okay.
Oh, wow.
You know, that he told a story on the podcast when he started the Phoenix Suns. He had a little office at the Coliseum, which we're very close to, and he had a desk and a phone, and he had made the decision he was going to hire. I think that he had already made the decision, but they were going to hire Al McCoy to be their in-game announcer because Al McCoy did every single game until he retired. And he said the guy walked in and handed me his resume. He wanted the job as the in-arena announcer. And I hired Al McCoy. I didn't hire him, and it was Al Michaels.
Al Michaels.
Do you believe in miracles?
Yeah.
That guy.
Wow.
Yes.
So he said we've laughed about it over the years that our careers worked out pretty well.
Yeah.
But those kinds of stories you just can't get in a quick snippet somewhere.
Right.
But in this format, you can get it out of people. They're just great stories. Sitting down with Al McCoy, I got to talk to Al McCoy. He was the last. I think I was the last person to interview him before he passed, and he was such a good friend. And to hear his stories about growing up where he did in farm country in Iowa, and just what a down to earth man he is, and just cool stories about his life. Great stuff.
Yeah. No, it's awesome. Now, I guess the direction I kind of want to go now is how our relationship started as far as you and the department, because it goes back to 2016, 2017,
whatever the year
like
was.
That.
Yeah, the WM Phoenix Open was putting together a law enforcement appreciation day that they were going to do after the Pro-Am on Wednesday. And I have friends that are Thunderbirds. I'm not a Thunderbird. I have friends that are Thunderbirds, and they asked me because of my connection with law enforcement if I would help set it up. I said, I'll anything I can do to help. And you were there. I met you, and I said, I'd love to start being connected with DPS. I'm connected with Phoenix PD and others, but I don't know anybody at and you followed through, and we got to be friends from that. And then I got to know more and more about DPS and talk to the director. I traveled around the state and was able to be the MC for the awards across the state, which helped me learn even more, especially about your civilian employees and the great work they do. Yeah. And what it does for me is I'm such a supporter of law enforcement is it gives me an opportunity to be more educated so that when I go back in the studio, I've got stories of heroism that we just don't hear and sacrifice and the hard work of people in the agencies. And so it makes me better educated and it solidifies my belief that your profession is the most honorable profession on the planet. You in the military, first responders in the military, self-sacrifice to me is just the greatest job. And you should have somebody at least out there telling the good side of the stories.
Sure. Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah. I think TV makes for the bad side of the stories.
Some
and things
does.
like that.
Some.
But I love what you said. So are there any, because you helped do our award ceremonies for those that are listening and watching. Every year we do award ceremonies in the North, here in the Central, and in the South. And there's an array of awards we give to both our professional staff and our sworn. And oftentimes those awards are awards of heroism of some sort. Is there anything that stands out that you remember as you were presenting these awards to our troopers? That
he hates when I tell this story, but I'm going to do it anyway because I know I just found out that his wife is also a trooper, and I didn't know this. Okay. But Elliot Ness, which I love the fact that you guys have a cop that is named Elliot Ness.
Yeah. Yes.
Years ago, I got pulled over coming east on the 10 from Buckeye, and I was going home. It was Sunday afternoon, and I wasn't paying attention to my speed, and I think I was doing 82 and a 65, and I look up, and I'm getting lit up. So I do what I always do. I pull over. All my windows go down in the truck. I have a firearm in the vehicle. If he comes up to the passenger side, I tell him where the firearm is. He secures it and writes me a ticket, which I absolutely deserved. So I told him I appreciated his professionalism because I go on the radio and I go to your award ceremonies and I brag about the professionalism of law enforcement, and he just proved everything I said. So I told him I'm friends. It was one of the previous directors, colonels. I said, I'm friends with the director. I do your award ceremonies every year. I travel the state to do the award ceremony. And I just wanted to thank him for his professionalism. And he just got this really, not horrified look, but this dejected look. And I said, I was never going to tell you beforehand because I would never name drop to get out of a ticket. But he said, I was just named Trooper of the Year for Metro West, and you have to give me my award in 2 weeks. It was the best. I had a whole speech lined up. He couldn't be there. He had to be in court, but his squad was there. I brought the ticket. I showed everybody. It was hilarious. It was the most perfect example. It was hilarious. And everybody was on texting him, and I got to meet him again, see him face to face not long ago, and he was a good sport about the whole thing.
Oh, he's a great guy. First time I met him, I was like, "You're Elliot Ness?
Yeah.
The Untouchables?
The Untouchables."
You know?
And now he's a sergeant.
He's a great guy. Great guy.
Terrific. A terrific guy.
His wife is great.
And very even-keeled, like you would want, just a professional, very friendly.
Sure.
And I've told the story on the radio a number of times, and I'll get a message. I think the first time he sent me a message on social media, he said, "Hey, that was me. I didn't realize that was me." And I forgot about that, but he had, so I remind him as often as I can now.
Well, we always appreciated you doing that. I think it brought just a little bit more to those award ceremonies that we had someone like you that is well known and well respected to be there in our support. And what you mentioned was professional staff. And we've interviewed professional staff on this podcast even recently to talk about everything that they do too.
One of the most significant awards I remember was your professional staff. That there was a statistic, and I don't remember the exact numbers, but there was this huge backlog of sexual assault kits that had not been tested. And the work that department did in a very short amount of time compared to the numbers they were up against to get rid of that backlog so that those cases arrests could be made and prosecutions could happen. And I thought nobody will ever hear that story because they're not sworn officers or sworn troopers. But the hard work and dedication to that, because it's so important to those victims, I'll never forget that part of it. Of that, it isn't just the sworn staff. That your professional staff works their tails off, and they deserve recognition too.
Absolutely. And what a lot of folks may not know, especially when it comes to the crime lab, they're processing those kits for most agencies around the entire state.
Yeah, because unless you're in like Maricopa County or Pima County, you can't afford to have your own crime lab.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's awesome.
So you've been in the radio business for a while. How has it evolved since you've been in?
I like the changes. It's funny because I always say you can't teach an old dog new tricks, but I love the new tricks, man. I love social media. We are a multimedia company. KTAR has been for over 100 years. They've been a voice here in the Valley, but they have also been smart enough. I work for really smart people. They know that if you think you're just a radio station, you are wrong. Our YouTube channel is very popular, and it is the biggest way people find us. We have social media platforms, which I love. We have cameras in our studio, which every one of our shows is live. Our interviews, when the director is in studio with me, that they can watch the interview, and then it lives on the YouTube channel. People can go back and watch it whenever they want. That evolution has been so good to make sure that we have our platform is so strong, 100,000 watt radio station with the history we have. But if we're not on TikTok and if we're not on Instagram, if we're not on YouTube, we're lost. The podcasting, we have a full studio like this where all of us can do our podcasts from. It's just, if you aren't out there in that platform, man, if you're not lost yet, you will be soon.
Yeah.
So that's what I think. You've seen bigger changes than I have.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, it's shrunk tremendously. It's just unbelievable. When I started in this business, I actually had hair. So
Me too. You're the only one in the room that can't laugh at that.
That's right. Well, I'm not going into media, so.
Well, no, you have hair.
Yeah, and that's why I have hair. Apparently,
that's true.
Yeah. So you did a ride along, not too long ago.
Not too long
with
ago.
Two of our guys.
Yeah.
And you had some experiences, and this is just a segment of one night.
Yeah.
I mean, imagine if you were to do it for a week.
It was a Saturday night into a Sunday morning, which was terrific. So I got to be on a very busy night. Was it Saturday? Yeah, Saturday night into a Sunday morning, I believe, and right along in the West Valley, we went to a minor collision at an off-ramp right near the stadium on the 101. and it was the northbound 101, and the crash happened on the off ramp, so it wasn't on the freeway. But sitting there against the wall on the barricade right there and watching how stupid people drive, even getting off the freeway, and how close they come and they don't move over. And there's fire trucks and there's police lights, and yet they just are almost oblivious to the fact that they're this close to people. That was my first lesson. And then riding with the captain, Culvert, in an unmarked vehicle that I will tell people, I always thought I can spot a cop from a mile away and I can spot a cop car from a mile away. No, you can't. No, you can't. And I'm not going to say what kind of a vehicle it is. I'm sure people know, but watching how traffic behaves from a cop perspective when they don't see a cop car around was mind-blowing. 107 miles an hour on the 202, 5 kids in a car. The oldest was 17 and the driver was 15 years old. Out past curfew, nobody had a driver's license except the 17-year-old, and why wasn't he driving instead of the 15-year-old? And then not more than 40 minutes later, we were going through the tunnel on I-10 West, and there were 2 guys in a Camaro at over 130 miles an hour, weaving in and out of traffic like Frogger. I just blown away.
Yeah. And we see the result of what happens post-crash.
You see the worst case scenario.
Yeah, the worst case scenario. And, there is a place for those unmarked vehicles. And that's in that case, our goal, we want to change drivers' behavior. And if they aren't changing their behavior just because they don't think that anyone's around to watch, that's, we want them to not know, or we want them to change their behavior when they don't think that anyone is around.
Right. Well, in the combination of, again, I'm a civilian, but the combination of watching a vehicle that isn't just driving really fast, but is also driving crazy. I mean, switching 3-4 lanes at a time, over from the number 2 lane to the diamond lane and back across, is to see that is terrifying, because all it's going to take is one mistake. If those people get injured, that's sad enough, but the people they take with them, which I'm sure you guys witness way too often.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wrong way driver on the freeway right in front of us. I never would have imagined I would see it happen. But I watched a guy turn left at the 101 in Southern. He was going to go north in the southbound lanes. If we weren't right behind him and lit him up and got him turned around, he would have gotten to the freeway. And he was drunk. Well, I think he was drunk. I guess he was drunk. And save that guy's life and maybe some other people's lives. But how terrifying that is for that 5 seconds of, did we just see this happen?
Yeah. No, it's incredible. And wrong way drivers, we've talked about this before, Mike and Warren. In my career, those are some of the calls that just get me amped up the most, because I've seen the end result. I've been on scenes of the end result of wrong way drivers and wrong way crashes. Right. And so I just know, hey, I know what the potential is here for death, life-threatening injuries. And so it's scary.
Well, it just, in the perspective for me, because I've been privileged, I've ridden with Phoenix PD a ton of times, and it's different on the freeway because everything is dangerous. And when you're in a car doing 80 miles an hour,
you're going highway speed.
You're going highway speed, and you're safe in your bubble, and you don't feel like there's any danger until there is. But when you're standing on the side of the freeway watching that traffic go by, those rules about people moving over to the left if they can, and if they can't move over, slow way down, it changed my whole perspective just that one night, because it is terrifying. I don't know how you get used to it.
It's interesting you mentioned that, because I actually just did a podcast with ADOT. We had a move over day, designated to trying to get the word out for people to move over. And I was talking with Doug Pacey over there, one of their PIOs, and he said at one point they actually took all the media out to the racetrack and stood them on the other side of the barrier wall, and then drove vehicles by at 75, 80 miles an hour just to give them that perspective. And at the time, I was thinking, man, if there were a safe way to do that with everyone that got their driver's license, it would change that perspective. Because when you are standing there and you have cars and semis going by you at those speeds, it can be scary.
Yeah.
Super scary. Yeah. And it's one of our biggest fears is getting hit by a car.
And how many of those situations where you get people distracted because they're looking at what you're doing, and then a secondary crash happens because they're not paying attention to what's going on in front of them? The danger of that happening.
Yeah. And I've had situations where, you know, a lot of times you'll see maybe two troopers on a traffic stop, and one of them will back up to give even more room to the trooper that's actually up there working. But that also affords them an opportunity, if somebody doesn't move over, that they can try and educate that person.
Right.
And I can't tell you the number of times I've talked to people that said, I didn't even see you.
Right.
Marked car, flashing lights. So that's all for naught if you're not paying attention. If you're driving distracted, you're looking on your phone. The move over a lot doesn't mean anything at that point, right?
No.
So I'm glad you had that perspective.
It was a great night. You know, I got to witness a DUI, which it's not fun to see somebody get arrested, but witness how you all work in a coordinated way. Witnessing that and watching how they work together, the speeds at night on the freeway, the traffic stops, 107 miles an hour on a carload of kids. It just gives you an appreciation, a different appreciation, I think. And all of that helps me be better educated when I go on the air, that I don't feel like I'm speaking hypothetically anymore. I've actually seen it.
You saw it. You know it firsthand.
I saw it.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome.
Yeah. So,
Warren, any thoughts?
I just want to thank you, Mike, for coming in.
Listen, I could do this.
It's been an education getting to know a little bit about Mike Broomhead.
I like all this. I appreciate you having me. You and I have been friends over the years, and it's always good to catch up with you, and it's great to talk with you.
Absolutely, man. It's definitely a pleasure.
It's just fun.
Hopefully
we
can do it again. And yeah, like you said, I just like this format. It just gives us a chance to get to know people. We're not we're not up against the clock. And
you know, and it's let me just say one last thing is that in my business, we know statistically we're changing audience over every 10 or 15 minutes. So when you're in the car same time of day, I would appreciate everybody that listens. You get to know 10 minutes of me. This format affords me to do a lot more. So I hope that your troopers, that everybody at DPS understands that I am a champion for what you do, all law enforcement, all first responders, because I don't think you get the credit, and I don't think that the people have taken a time to really understand how dangerous your job is. And my brother being a cop and my sister-in-law being a cop, both being deputies. When hurricanes hit Southwest Florida, my sister-in-law stays home with their kids when they were younger, but my brother's out 25 hours, 30 hours in a row.
Right.
He's worried about his family. His family's worried about him.
Right.
And I don't care how long you've been in this job, that you never get over that. So when bad things happen and you got to roll somewhere, your family's worried about you and you're thinking about them. And I don't ever want to lose that perspective. So I hope anybody at DPS that watches this understands. I do my best to understand better. And I always will be a champion because it's a noble profession. And I think 95% of our society agrees with that.
Yeah, I think you're right. Again, we always appreciate your support, Mike, our friendship. We can, I love having this relationship.
Yeah.
And thank you for all you do and your voice on the radio. And
anytime, man.
Your voice is recognizable pretty much anywhere.
It is. So. I got recognized the other day by my voice in an elevator, and it was very strange. It's still, I never get used to it, but it's fun. I love it.
That's awesome.
That's
thank you again.
Thanks,
appreciate
man.
you, Mike.
Thank you. KTAR's Mike Broomhead on the 7 Points Podcast. Thank you for watching and listening.